Hello everybody, this is Michelle Fox and welcome back to The Simple Quilter. Today I'm going to be showing you a fast and fun and easy springtime quilt project. I'm going to be showing you how to make these darling little mug rugs. These are fast, fun, and easy to make, so let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I did was, of course, I drew out my little diagram. Now, the finished size of this is going to be 6.5 by 9.5 once you add the binding. And I'll include the measurements in the description below. But this just takes 6 different colors for your coordinating fabrics, a focus fabric, and 2 small pieces of white. The next thing I did is I just selected a focus fabric, and I just wanted to show you how easy this is to do. Now this is one of my favorite little fabrics, and so I just decided to pick up some of the colors in this. Now you can use your stash or you can use your scrap bins, and I did a combination of both. I didn't really have a lot of blues, but I wanted to pick up this little turquoise blue. So I could use these 2 colors. This color's a little bit off, but I think it would work okay to give a little bit more variety of color in there. Then I just went to my orange bin and I just picked out some different oranges. This is the lighter orange. It has a really light orange in there. The greens were the hardest because I really didn't have that lime green, but any of these greens would work. And again, this just came from my scrap bin. You only need 1.5 inch strips of these pieces. And then I went to the pinks. This pink could work well as a binding even, the solid pink. And I like this pink because it picks up the lighter tones as well as the darker tones of pink in there. You could also use this, and I even thought this might be fun if you cut it going against the stripes. And you can even toss in a light gray. So it's just really easy to pull from your stash or your scraps, or like I did, using a combination of both. And while you're at it, if you have enough fabric, you could just do a little assembly line and create more than one. Those would be fun gifts for quilt friends or family members. Okay, now this is the focus fabric I started with. I started with just a fat quarter, and I love this fabric. I really like hummingbirds, and this has just beautiful little hummingbirds almost hidden amongst these flowers. Okay, and let me show you the fabrics that I selected. I did a yellow with just a little polka dot, a green variegated to pick up the light greens and the dark greens, a purple, a pink that had a variety of shades of pink in it, this fun yellow that has writing about flowers on it, and this green and white polka dot. Okay, so I want to start the assembly of this with the focus fabric right here. And first of all, you want to start with this strip. It's 2.5 inches wide. Now, you can do it 2 ways. You can cut it right at the 6.5 inches that you need, or you can make it a little bit longer. These are 8.5 inches, and then trim it down. Now, these can be 1 inches, like these are, or you can do 1.25 inches and then trim them down. I like to sew it together and then trim it down because it just gives a nice clean edge and makes your piecing look wonderful. So all you're going to do is take your focus fabric and sew these 1.25 inch strips on either side. And again, I'll put the cutting instructions in the description below. And you're just going to sew those together. So when you get them sewn together, they're going to look like this. Now, I know this piece needs to be 6.5 inches, and I know these need to be trimmed down to 3/4 of an inch. So I'm just going to trim these down. And it just gives these such a beautiful look. So I'm going to trim this down to 3.5 by 6.5, being sure to get the hummingbirds in there. And I'm actually going to be able to get 2 hummingbirds in there. These go directly in my dog bed bag. And there's my centerpiece. Okay, then you're going to take your strips and lay them out in the order in which you want to sew them. And you could just play around with how you want to lay these out, whichever way is most pleasing to you. Okay, you've got them laid out like you want them. And then what I do is I sew these 2 strips together, then these 2 strips together, then these 2 strips together. Quiet. And that will leave you with strips that look just like this. 2 strips of each. And then you're going to simply sew these strips together. These 3 sets of 2, you're just going to sew them together. And it's going to look just like this. With this strip, I can do 4 cuts, so I can make 2 mug rugs out of this. Now, I'm going to cut my strips a little bit larger in width because I want to be sure to trim them down. I'm going to trim off the selvage here in the back, or here along the side. Okay, I need 2 3.5 by 6.5 inch cuts. And I'm just subcutting these. I really like to sew the strips together like this, simply because I think it's faster for one thing, and I think it just looks neater. The next ones I'm going to cut a little bit wider too. I'm going to cut 5.5. I only need 4.5, but I'm going to cut 5.5 so I can further trim this down after I get it assembled. Just lining these lines up to keep everything really straight. Okay. Then you're just going to take your pieces and you're going to sew them together just like that. Now, if you want, you don't have to sew big strips together. Say you just have little pieces, 1.5 inch strips, and you just want to sew them individually. You can sew them just like this and then trim up the edges. You don't have to sew them in big long strips like what I do, but I wanted to make more than one. I had the extra fabric, so I went ahead and sewed them like this simply because it's faster and I was going to make more than one. Okay, so now remember I trimmed this piece down to 3.5 by 6.5, and you're just going to simply sew these pieces together. Now, when you're making these strips, you want to be really careful to handle your fabric carefully and to go slowly, and I absolutely have to pin. I wasn't going to show you this close up, but I've decided to. As you can see, this got crooked. Now, I was in a hurry when I made this one because I was trying to get a sample done, and it got crooked. I didn't pin these either. So it looks a little sloppy, but of course this is just my sample, and I was going to make another one, and I'm like, no, I want to show you what can happen. Now really it could look all right, it's a mug rug, but if you want a more professional, neat look, then you're going to need to pin your fabrics and press them really well, and to be really careful when handling it, because you can distort these and get a little curvy look in your finished product. Okay, so I'm just going to sew those together. Now, once they're sewn together, it's going to look just like this. Now again, this is going to need to be trimmed down, but I'm not going to totally trim it down until after I've quilted it, because I want really nice clean edges when I go to put the binding on. Now I'm going to show you just a quick way that you can do the basting of these. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I am just going to first take my batting piece and tape it down to my little work surface here. And I'm not going to pull it really tight, but I'm going to pull it snug enough so that there aren't any wrinkles. Okay, so now that that is ready, as you can see, my batting's cut a little bit bigger. I've cleaned all the threads off the batting, so nothing's going to show through, especially on these white strips. Now I'm going to take this out into the garage where I have a place that's covered with plastic, and I'm going to use my 505 basting spray. I'm going to spray it on the back, then I'm going to come back and lay it down just like that and smooth it out. So I'll be right back. And I'm just going to lay this down, one end, and then just smooth it down just like that. Okay, then I'm going to take this up and I'm going to put my backing fabric, which is just a little bit bigger than my batting, and I'm going to tape that down so that lays nice and smooth and flat. Okay, and as you can see, my backing is just a little bit bigger than my batting. So now I'm going to take this out into the garage, and I'm going to give this a little spray with 505 basting spray. I'll be right back. Okay, now that I have that sprayed, I'm just going to lay this down close to the edge on that side and smooth it out. Okay. And then that is ready to quilt. Now, one thing I did want to mention, since this is a smaller project, I cut my binding strips to 2 1/4 inches. And I do have a video which I will link up above here, and I'll put in the description below on how to complete the binding. But this is ready to quilt. And then I've used this super cute little green and white polka dot for the binding. And that little project will be done and ready to give as a gift or for you to use. I just want to be sure to let all of you know that in addition to my Wednesday videos, I'll be posting a new series on Fridays called Quick Tip Friday. These videos will simply share quilting tips and hacks, and the first one will air this Friday. I hope you'll take time to watch those. Now, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't. Please share with a friend. And as always, leave a comment. I love to get the comments and I try to reply to each and every one. So until next time, have fun quilting.